Hey everyone, this is Doug Carson, and you're currently listening to the WeWFM podcast that aims to be the voice of all things workforce management related. I'm joined for this podcast by Anshuman Dwivedi, who's the head of vendor management at Scalable Capital based in Berlin, Germany. Today, I'm going to talk about how workforce management is a critical and supportive component to outsourcing vendor management. But not only that, we're going to dive into a few personal topics, including who are the three people who have been the most influential to Anshuman, one of which is super interesting and worth tuning in just for that.
Hey everyone, I'm really happy to have one of the leaders of the contact center outsourcing industry and a good friend of mine, Anshuman Dwivedi. Anshuman has had 2 decades of collective experience in customer service outsourcing, business operations, both on and offshore vendor management. He's really well traveled. He's got great analytical skills, which is of course something we in workforce management really appreciate, but he's also really strong in EQ and leadership as well. Anshuman, really great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for spending the time to do this.
Thanks, Doug. The pleasure is mine. I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Of course, this podcast is about workforce management, and we're certainly going to get into that a little bit later. But before we do, I'd like our listeners to get to know you a bit better. Because I know you very well, but there's a lot of people out there that don't. So if you don't mind, could you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, what part of the world that you're currently based in, how long you've lived here, or how long you've been here, and some sort of tastes of your career journey to date?
Absolutely, happy to do that. So I'm from India originally. I moved to Germany in 2008 for my master's. The goal was to see the world and see what lies outside of where I was. And I finished my master's in 2010, and then jumped into the job market as anybody would want to.
Yeah,
it was a tough year. With the financial crisis, but things worked out.
Sure, yeah. That was a difficult time. Yeah,
that was a very difficult time, and a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen. But things worked out. So basically, my entire career has been within the customer service and vendor management and workforce management domain. Very early in my career, I did actually spend quite a lot of time within the WFM realm. So
okay. Do you know what? I actually didn't know that.
So. that's why I was so excited about this, because I was used to be a workforce analyst, and I fundamentally believe that it's probably one of the most important functions that a company could or would have. There's not a lot of visibility or understanding around it, but it's super great that you're opening a channel for people to understand that, and I think we can dig deeper into that as we speak. So yeah, that's what I did. Mostly customer service. I fundamentally believe that also that one customer treated bad is one too many, and this is where I think also WFM can come into picture to rescue that. I spent about 10 years with eBay, a well-known marketplaces platform. Up till last month, I was working with a digital neobank called N26, leading the global vendor management. Also, they're working very closely with you in the workforce management team, so that was also quite great. And interesting that we do this podcast today, because starting tomorrow, I would be joining another wealth management fintech. They're basically leading again the global vendor management operations for them.
Super exciting, yeah, and literally the day before you start your new job as well. So
exactly,
yeah, double appreciation for sure for doing this. Yeah, that's cool. So I kind of have a bit of an inside track to you, because obviously we've worked together, we've known each other for a while now. I know you like your food, Anshuman. In fact, I've even tasted your food, so for everyone out there, I can tell you he's a good cook. Am I even right? You've got a Facebook group as well for Indian food in Berlin.
Yeah, exactly.
How did that happen, by the way? I never asked you that.
So when I'm not vendor managing, I'm cooking. That's my meditation or therapy, whatever you call it. So what I realized is that there's a lot of reviews out there for restaurants which are, I think, are not authentic. And I love good food, and I love to leave real feedback and get real feedback. So I decided to start a Indian food in Berlin page. Surprisingly, got good traction. I think now we have a little over 1,000 members, increasing every day.
Yeah, nice.
And
good size for a Berlin group, right? You wouldn't have thought for Indian food as well. Really, really cool.
Exactly. And the goal is to no marketing concepts, no restaurants posting, only guests who went to a restaurant want to leave real feedback. That's what we promote, and so people can really find out where are good restaurants to eat. So that's something on the side.
So I mean, for everyone listening out there, if you want to know a good place to eat Indian food in Berlin, Anshuman's your man for sure. And and if you get to know me a bit better as well, I also endorse his cooking. So big up on that for sure. That's really cool. So like one of the things that I like to ask, because I think it tells a lot about who you are as a person, is the people that have influenced you in your life. Who would you say the 3 people, or your top 3 people that have been the most influential to you, and why?
I always hope that somebody asks me that question, So thank you for that. I mean, there are a lot of people who I admire, who have influenced my thinking and my style of working or being. But there are 3 people in particular that I have been super influenced by. And this is not a surprise. I think many people admire the personalities I'm going to mention. The very first one is Nelson Mandela. Why? Because I think he taught the world how not to keep hate in your heart, and how really to just move forward, forgive people, and just do something bigger than yourself. And I always I'm always amazed how can somebody have that kind of perseverance and that kind of heart and strength, So his life is absolutely for me is like a miracle, and I really learn a lot.
It's actually funny when you said like teach us not to have hate. That sent shivers up my back. It's like it's something that we all have inside of us, but the things that he went through, I agree. Good choice.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, imagine living in a cell for 30 years and then coming out, becoming the president, and then inviting those people who are your perpetrators, being there, inviting them as a guest, and having no hate. It's impossible. For a normal human being, it's impossible. So if we as human beings can do 10% of that, I think we're going to move forward.
100%, yeah. So Nelson Mandela, definitely tick on mine as well, for sure.
That's one. The second one would be then President Obama. Why? I think he taught the world, no matter how powerful you are, no matter how strong you are, you can still show your emotions. You can still cry, and crying is okay. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're feeling that, if you can show your emotions, you can cry, and that's fine. If you cry, it doesn't mean you're not strong.
That's true.
And
actually, do you know what? Given you, that surprised me. Like your why on that definitely surprised me. I like you think of Obama, but that's an angle you don't think of.
No, this is like the top reason why I admire him so much. I think it's just no facade.
Yeah.
That's that. The third one was going to surprise you even more because, as I said, I live and breathe customer service, and anything around supports it. The third person would be a waitress in California's diner called Denny's.
Okay.
And this person working there at the restaurant for 38 years.
Wow.
38 years in that restaurant. So I was there, and she was serving us, and the impeccable customer service. Wherever I go, I kind of try to pick up on these aspects. How are people serving you? It was just absolutely mind blowing, right? I got up, I asked for a napkin. She's like, oh, please sit down. I'll get it to you. And she like brings the napkin with a smile, and she served us like I've never been served before, right? So I'm leaving so now this is why I admire her, why she inspired me. I'm leaving the restaurant. I'm asking her, hey, can I ask you a question? Like, how long do you work here? I'm impressed. Like, how do you do this? And she's like, oh, honey, I worked here for 38 years. And the only thing I can tell you is that you've got to love your customers genuinely. And that just stuck with me all the time.
Wow.
It was so honest. You've got to love your customers genuinely. And when you do that, when you put that in business, when you make decisions with that thought, I think you cannot fail.
She needs to like go into consulting. 38 years. Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I've used the story and her in many of the talks that I gave, presentations that I made, and it really stuck with people. It stuck with me. I always think about that when we're doing something, making a process, making a flow, making a policy or decision. Are we loving our customers?
It's absolutely true. Yeah. Well,
and these are the three people that have really inspired me, and I will continue to do so.
Well, do you know what? If you'd given me a bet for your three people, maybe I would have come up with Nelson Benedetto randomly. But the 38 years lady in Denny's, yeah. Do you know what? I might steal that story. That's a really cool. Or even maybe just make a trip there. Just,
please do. This was absolutely. It was absolutely incredible. It was one of the best experiences I ever had.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So moving on to kind of workforce management topics, and I even this is even cooler now for me because I didn't know that you had a workforce management background. So I did. So that's really
so
cool.
Be careful. Be careful.
Yeah. One of the things that we're trying to do in the podcast is also to really help people to understand what workforce management is. And it's quite interesting when you go around and ask this question because everyone has a different version. Yeah. But in your own words, how would you describe workforce management? What does it mean to you?
I can.
It's a hard one, right?
It's hard one, right?
It's like if you had to explain it to your parents. Yeah, say you were doing workforce management and you had to explain, like, okay, this is what I do for a living. How would you describe it?
I could give you funny ones, but
go for a funny one.
We can talk also about more professional definition that I think what it is. But if I have to think about it, let's say. So let me try this. So when I was a kid, in my village, we had a lot of livestock, a lot of them. And there were two people in the family who were responsible for taking them out at the right time, making sure where they go, what they graze, and when they come back, and how do you basically make sure that this is happening like right as it should, right? So
I'm intrigued where this is going.
maybe I think maybe this might not be a great example because then this kind of let's cut this one and we take another example. How can I best describe it? So if you're producing goods in a factory, right? You need a well-defined assembly line, otherwise it cannot work, right? You can have best of the processes how to produce something, but if you don't have a well-defined assembly line, you cannot produce those stuffs. You can have different parts in different parts of the factory, but if you don't have a well-defined assembly line, which is deciding what goes where at what time, when, how does it is put together, I think this is how I think of a good WFM team. It basically aligns everything that is happening in the company. I think it helps you to create the optimal flow for your organization. And without a WFM team, I think this is not possible. And my job, being a vendor manager, I think it would not work out the way it does if there was if there wasn't a good, competent WFM team. So that's how I see them, as a very well-functioning assembly line that really kind of directs what should happen when and at what time and what speed and when. This is for me is.
And it's true, isn't it? When it comes to outsourcing or contact center customer service, the BPO world in general, workforce manager is very, very strong in both the client side and on the outsourcing side. For you, I know that you've been on both sides, but for you, how's workforce management helped you and your teams perform the sort of duties that you need to do as a professional?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, my team and I, and the job and the work that we do is, I can safely say it's impossible without having a WFM team backing us pretty much all the time. So, we talk about scheduling, talk about planning, talk about the key inputs that create the efficiency in a BPO. As a vendor manager, I may have an idea, but I don't have the deep expertise to create those flows and create those kind of efficiencies. The plan, how would it work out, at interval level? And if I don't have that, if I don't have a competent WFM team, it would be impossible. So really, I have a network of 5 partners and got 400, 500 people working. And if vendors don't know when to, how to plan those shifts, how does the plan look like for the week, for the month, for 6 months? This is all that is basically executed and led by a WFM team. And you put that away, nothing will work. It won't function, basically. So my role, for my job, for my team, we wouldn't survive without an efficient WFM team. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, for sure. And on those sort of interfaces that you have to have, not just with the vendor management team, with the workforce management team, but generally with the outsourcer itself. How do you typically like to set up those interfaces with the sort of the client side workforce management team and the outsourcer? For example, do you see it working better when the workforce management team engages directly with the outsourcer? And if so, how and when?
Yeah.
Or do you see it sort of better as a sort of acting as a support function to the vendor management team? How have you seen it best? Maybe there's no right or wrong answer to this.
No, that's a great question, and different companies, different teams work differently. If you ask me, for me, I mean, having transparency and open communication is the key to success when you're handling that kind of setup, that kind of operations. And I'm always encouraging WFM teams to interact directly with the WFM teams at the partner side. For one reason, so nothing is lost in translation. I can say I know stuff, but I'm not an expert. And trusting your WFM teams is really like the key to success here, because you don't want things to lose the meaning while it's coming via VM team. I think VM teams may and should act as a point of escalation. Something is not working, then it could be channeled via VM team. But I think, this is how we set our teams up. So our WFM teams are directly interacting with the WFM teams at the partner side, also taking decisions, keeping the relative stakeholders informed, really deciding, because they own this piece. And this is how it works really well. I've seen working really well.
What are the core considerations? So what areas of focus for the client side workforce management team? And I want to come on to a minute as well around kind of what the differences are, because there are slight differences, aren't there, between client side and but what are the main considerations do you feel?
So normally, I'm assuming you're asking about the team setup that when the site has versus in-house teams. Yeah. So normally there are 2 ways to do it. So if you have, what you could do is you could say, okay, we as a client would provide you the entire planning and scheduling for the next couple of months, next intervals, and you would have to execute. So then you would need a smaller team at vendor side, probably an RTM POC, real-time management POC, and probably a WFM analyst who would be able to comprehend the information that is coming from the team, from the client side, and be able to flawlessly execute it. So that's one side where a bigger piece of responsibility lies on the client side. It all depends on what kind of commercial model you have, but then this is one way to go. The other way could be you say, hey, I would like to have a full-fledged WFM team on the vendor side, where we as a client provide you the volume input, right? You would create the scheduling, you would create the plan, you would create the demand, and then the client side WFM team would then just basically review it and give you a green signal, okay or not okay, or can review the input criteria and then give feedback saying, hey, can you adjust these parameters, and let's look at what the actual demand looks like. Does it help the service level or not? So more acting as a kind of a checks and balances barrier, rather than really creating the entire plan. So this is two different ways. Do you outsource WFM activities as well, or do you keep it in-house? And then again, depends on what kind of commercial model you have.
And I presume that there's a best and a not so best time to have these two types of models.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, or is it a certain circumstance that you would choose one or the other?
I think I would still like to keep the WFM core functions close to home, because as I said, it's super critical. A mistake made there, it's all about input output. If you've got better input, you most likely will have a good output. So having this critical function close to home makes sense, which means that you're creating the planning, you're creating the scheduling, and then the partners are executing it. And this is what I would prefer, because then you have a better control on your input. And this is what I've seen also happening in the majority of the time. If you have rather small operations, you probably can think about outsourcing it, but my preference is to keep it home.
Yeah, interestingly, on my side as well, I feel that, probably for different reasons. I think that your workforce management team often interlinks as well with other parts of the business and can translate the strategy. So when you have that outsourced, you can be a bit disconnected.
Yeah, exactly.
It probably depends as well on complexity as well, I would imagine. Okay, really interesting. Thanks for that. I want to kind of just change the subject a little bit here. So we're all, for the last 2 years now, been facing everything's different in the world right now because of COVID, and just when we thought maybe we were going to have a bit of respite, it looks like things are back to being difficult again. I hope by the time this is released, we're back to feeling positive about it. But with the explosion of COVID, there's also been an explosion of remote working as well. And I think we're all still adjusting to what that means to work from home and how to find the right balance of work versus home life, particularly when the two are so now intermixed with as it is with remote working. And then, of course, recently in Portugal, they introduced these new labour laws where they're trying to protect remote workers and hopefully help them to provide a better work-life balance. It's a very topical subject for workforce management, because we know very well in workforce management that you need to prevent burnout, because it plays out very obviously to us in numbers, whether that's through sickness or increased attrition or whatever it might be. Even sometimes people just being slower at their job. But the workforce management side of things, what I'm interested in kind of is, how do you manage your work-life balance, and what advice and recommendations would you give to companies who want to provide better work-life balance for their employees?
Yeah, that's definitely the topic being discussed around. The boundaries have been blurred between home and office, because home is office, right? But there are two things here. One, with work from home taking a better part of the strategy. First of all, this is the biggest A/B test the world could have done on work from home versus work from office.
So true.
So quick and with immediate results and conclusion. I think one of the things is that it's all about discipline, right? So you have to realize that although you're working from home, you're working. So, maybe make a time, okay, I'm going to work from this to this time, and after that time, that's it. That's my personal time. I'm not going to work anymore. There are now softwares in the market which actually, companies are thinking, or some of the companies I've heard also deployed, that they create a time for you between 9 and 6, and before 9 or after 6, you cannot log in, basically. So that is something that one should think about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And only. Wow, that's interesting.
only if you are, so if you want to log in, you need, same like you need an approval from a C-level or VP or something, that it works. So that's something that is also budding, I heard. But here's an interesting point. I think this is where now the role of WFM becomes even more critical, and this is where WFM can actually add more value rather than just running operations, but also creating being an active part in creating work-life balance for employees. Now there, a WFM team can say and own this piece, right? And create strategies, even tools and tech to contribute in this space, right? And this, I think, is a big opportunity for WFM teams across the world in companies to step up and say, look, you know what, we just not only schedule and plan, we can also help add value to your business. We can also help create better employee experience for you. And this, I think, is something that should be thought about.
It's interesting. Like, so workforce management teams, they focus a lot on productivity. They focus a lot on adherence to schedule and these sorts of things. But what about a metric that is like adherence to your work-life balance?
Exactly.
Something on the lines of this. That's
and then you can basically
very interesting.
You can basically turn your head towards the management and say, hey, look, yes, I'm here to create productivity, to make sure that your SLAs are met, to make sure that everything is in order. But I'm also here to be a let's call it a watchdog, to make sure that my teams, my employees, or your employees actually not press too hard. I mean, there's normally a negative image attached to RTM or WFM. I remember when I was
police.
Police, exactly. When I was in WFM analyst, if I would go on the floor, take a round, everybody would be just not breathe. They would just sit there and just like, you would see everybody super serious. And as you left, I think that shouldn't happen, right? I think WFM should and would be a friend to the ops floor. And I think this is how also I see now an opportunity for WFM to become an advocate to the teams.
I can see that working really well with remote as well, where it's not so obvious if somebody
even more so.
Yeah,
even more so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a really great segue into my last question, actually. So, although now you're not going to be able to use this, so unfortunately, yeah. But what top 3 strategies or tips for workforce management would you have? And out of those strategies or tips, what would be your number 1 takeaway for the audience today, and why?
I'm assuming you mean how to create a well-functioning WFM team, or?
Yeah, just from your perspective. I mean, so I know you've had workforce management background in the background now, I know now, but of course, even just from a vendor management perspective.
Okay. I think the number 1 would definitely be an open, honest, and direct communication with your network. Right. So it could be in-house, could be outsourced. I think now any large-scale operation will have nearly anywhere between 60 to 80% business outsource. And this is where having a open, honest, and direct communication with your partner teams can really make or break it. That's number 1. Number 2, WFM team, as we just discussed, should more come across as a partner than as police. Right. So create that feeling of partnership with the vendor network or with the usual network, where the teams, the frontline teams that are delivering, they should have a sense of trust with WFM, and they should understand, look, they're here for my betterment. And this is something that could be used as a philosophy or strategy, however you want to take it. That would be number 2. And number 3, I think numbers are not always what they seem. So don't forget the human element when you're scheduling and planning. There'll always be deviations. Take those deviations, with a pinch of salt, and try to work around that. I think these 3 things I would say should be the strategy to work. And what's the top one? I think the top one would be, as I said, number 1 for me, having an open, honest, and direct communication with the network. They should know what you're planning, and on the other hand, you should also know what they are planning, what they know. Every information should flow seamlessly between the 2 points, and that I have seen always working. Then this will make sure you avoid surprises. And the worst thing that can happen in WFM planning is surprises. That just screws everything up, right? So that's what my 2 cents would be on this.
It's so true. It's that communicate side of things. I think that you can put as many numbers as you want down on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But to the true context only comes through communication.
Absolutely. And maybe just to add to that one, to give an example, and again, this in communication also goes, don't assume that partners know. We had a situation where once we onboarded a new partner, and having all this communication about planning how many FTEs we need, and so WFM was very open about, hey, these many FTEs we need to plan. We went to production, and suddenly we realized that actually we don't have enough hours that we needed. What happened? Everybody assumed that a definition of FTE for us is 8 hours. And the other side, we thought other side thinks also 8 hours. For them, it was 7.5. And who's wrong, who's right? That's not the question. The question is the communication was not clear. It was assumed. And then, the project was in a bit of a thick soup. So I think everything should be super clear in terms of communications, no assumptions made. And then I think it would definitely, the plans then wouldn't fail.
But that's a classic. Do you know how many times I've been asked, can you explain FTE to me?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's true, right? And don't assume that the language that you're using as well is the same, because
absolutely
there's no standard, right? So
there's no standard, exactly.
And I know you didn't pick it as your number one. I do agree with you, your number one, but is that I think workforce management, we often you'll find a lot that says I'm good with numbers, not so much with people. But it's the whole essence of workforce management is people. It's workforce. We're planning for people.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great tip as well. I truly do.
Yeah. I mean, it's workforce management. So if you just kind of break it down and go with management philosophies with workforce, it has lately become more about numbers, but I know how you do it. And this is how I think we should do it, more thinking about people, not just numbers.
Well, Anshuman, thank you very much for your time. On behalf of everyone listening here today, thank you for all of your insights. I think I particularly like the one around remote working and how workforce management could potentially just change the way that it's seen, less about the police, and actually start impacting people's work-life balance, not just through the way they schedule, but perhaps pointing out some things that are creating burnout for their people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Super fascinating. I want to wish you the best of luck for your new job tomorrow. By the time this is released, we'll know how you're getting on. But I'm pretty sure you're going to smash it.
Well, either smash it or probably I'll be starting a new job. We'll see.
We'll have to see. Once again,
thank you.
Yeah, once again, on behalf of WFM, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. It was really a pleasure, and I wish you all the best with your podcast. I'm sure you're gonna rock it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Anshuman.
Thank you for listening to WFM. This podcast is made and produced by André Leitão, Bilge Hentolun, Doug Carsteton, Gonçalo Gomes, and Kim Paz. If you like this show, don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues. Visit our website, www.wfm.com, to find more exclusive interviews and WFM content. See you next time. All rights reserved.